Hi, this is Joanna from Custom Quilts, and today I'm going to show you a little shortcut for cutting out your fabric pieces. And while this doesn't always work for fussy cutting because it's difficult to stack up your fabric exactly the same way when you're fussy cutting different motifs or stripes or things like that, if you're using solids or you don't care how the pattern falls, this is a great shortcut to use that will greatly cut down your cutting time. No pun intended, I guess. So, and this doesn't just apply to the Moroccan Tiles quilt. You can actually do this for lots of different quilts as long as you're cutting the same size pieces for each block. And so I'm going to be cutting out fabric A, which is this medallion center, or the main part of the medallion, excuse me. And so I've stacked up 4 different fabrics that I'm going to be using today in this demonstration. And what I've done ahead of time is I used some flatter, which is just spray starch. I use flatter because I like the way that it smells, and you don't have to use starch unless you just really want to, but definitely give all your fabrics a really good press so they are nice and smooth, they don't have any wrinkles, and they lay down nice and flat. And then the next thing you want to do is I like to line up my selvages. And we're about to trim those off here in just a minute. But I line up the selvages as closely as I can. And you can see my fabrics were not cut square. Or they were distorted whenever I pressed them. So what we're going to do first is we need to go ahead and square up. I'm going to trim away my selvage. So get rid of that guy. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to square up this line and make sure that all of these layers of fabric are even with each other, because right now they're not, as you can see pretty clearly. So you can see this mint colored one is way back here. So we want to make sure that we trim enough away so that they're all even with each other. So I like to line my ruler up against where I just squared up the selvage, and then take a little peek and make sure that I can see at least a little bit, like 1/8 of an inch of that, the smallest fabric peeking out, so that I know all of these guys line up. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim that away. Okay. Then I'm going to take it back over here as well. Okay, great. So now we're ready to go ahead and start cutting our pieces. And for the Moroccan Tiles quilts, we're going to need to cut, for each block, we'll need 4 of these rectangles. And so I'm going to go ahead and measure those out. So gonna do, this measurement is 4.5 inches by 8.5 inches. And so I just cut 4 at once. And I'm using this Olfa ergonomic cutter because it's a little bit easier to hold when you're applying more pressure. And you'll want to use at least a 45mm blade whenever you're going through multiple layers. And they also have endurance blades that last a little bit longer. Especially if you're cutting tons of blocks like I am on this quilt. I'm making the king size. But so I have my 4 pieces cut out, and I'll need to do this 3 more times to give me a total of 4 of those rectangle pieces. And the important thing whenever you're cutting multiple layers at once is to just kind of double check and make sure that you're not shifting the fabric whenever you're lining your ruler up. So you also make sure you cut cleanly. Just make sure that you can still see all of the edges and that one hasn't slid back quite a bit. So we're going to cut this one, and then we've got one more to do. Oh, I didn't cut all the way on that one either. Okay. Whoops. And you can definitely stack more than 4. I just like to do 4 because I know that I'm going through all the layers cleanly and I don't have to go back and cut again and again and again. Well, I say that and then I had to go back and cut that again. Okay, so here are 4 of each color, all nicely cut, and that would have taken me 4 times as long as if I hadn't stacked up these 4 fabrics together. So those are our rectangle pieces, and then we're also going to have to go and cut out 8 of each of these. So 8 of template 1 and 8 of template 2. And so I'm going to show you, I'm going to move my rectangles out of the way. Move these just a tiny bit. Okay, so now I'm going to show you, I'll go ahead and finish squaring this up. Great, get rid of that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to cut our template 1 pieces out. And for this part, whenever you're using these templates, I recommend using a 28mm rotary cutter, especially on this inner curve. Whenever you're cutting the template 2 pieces, you can definitely use a larger rotary cutter without it really affecting this outside curve. You're just going to have to go a little bit slower than you would with a straight cut. But getting this size, this 45mm blade in this circle, the inner circle portion here, is going to be difficult, and you might end up cracking part of your template. So you definitely, if you can, use a smaller diameter rotary cutter, or I would recommend hand tracing this inner curve and cutting it out with scissors if you don't have a smaller rotary cutter, just for the sake of accuracy. And so what I like to do, since it's a little more difficult with the 28mm to cut through 4 layers, is I like to cut the straight edges with the larger rotary cutter and then go back with the 28mm and follow that inner curve. Oh, that's so good. Okay. And then a lot of times you will have to go back and clean up these cuts. Okay, perfect. So now we've done 4 of those at once, which is awesome because cutting these curves can be a little bit tedious. And so whenever you can find a shortcut like that, it just makes it go by so much faster. And so there are a couple of ways that you can stack these to make the most of your fabric. Sometimes I like to cut like this, and then I'll bring the next one over here and do this way. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and do that right now, actually. So I need to cut 8 total of these in each fabric. Okay. So I'll come up here and do this next one. And I like to put them as close as I can. You can see right here that I cut into this fabric a little more than I should have. You can see that. And so I need to make sure that whenever I'm placing my template, I don't place my template on top of that because I don't want my fabric to already be cut in that curve. So I'm going to move it up just slightly. I'm going to cut the straight curve with my larger rotary cutter. Cut again. Again once more, and then I'm going to follow that inner curve with my smaller 28mm rotary cutter. Oops. Didn't go all the way through. Here we go. And again, just make sure you're keeping your fabrics lined up whenever you're making your cuts. Okay, so we've got 3 done. Then I'll come up here, make these cuts. And then follow that inner curve with our smaller rotary cutter. I think I went all the way through. Nope, I did not. I need to cut that again. Pull that away. Okay, so we're halfway done cutting those. Now I'm going to show you how to cut some of the template 2s. It's the same thing. I'm just going to show you that you can do it with the larger rotary cutter and how easy it is. So you just slow down a little bit, go slower than you normally would. And that's it. So there's 4 of those. And then I'll come up here and, whoops, make another cut. I'm actually going to move that up just a little bit. Perfect. Okay, and then we can come over here and do this one. So I'm just trying to kind of maximize my fabric and not waste a lot by placing my templates where they kind of nest together on the fabric. And then, let's see, that might be a smarter choice so I don't waste as much. Yeah, I think I like that one the best. Okay. Okay, so I'll need to cut twice as many of each of these. So I'll cut another 4 out and then another 4 of these. But hopefully that gives you a general idea of how easy it is to stack up your fabrics and cut multiples at the same time. And I hope you'll use this for the Moroccan Tiles quilt to cut down on some of your cutting time. And then, you know, feel free to use this over and over again on other quilt projects that you're working on because it'll really save you a lot of time. So yeah, thanks for sewing along with us.